Hello, and welcome to another episode of Five Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. Happy to be here with you and happy to have you here with us. And today, I am proud to say, finally, crawling on hands and knees from the western part of the state of California. And our guest finally has been able to make it, and that is Assistant Chief Chad Costa of the Petaluma Fire Department, and out in the outside the greater area of Greater Los Angeles County. And Assistant Fire Chief Chad Costa brings over 26 years of experience in the fire service, including both fire districts and city departments. He has demonstrated a commitment to innovation and leadership, having previously served as a technology and communications battalion chief. Costa holds a Master of Science in Fire Service Leadership and has completed the prestigious Executive Fire Officer Program. He is a rostered Type 1 Operations Section Chief with California Interagency Team 5, contributing to large-scale emergency response efforts across the state and the Western United States, including the Maui disaster. His professional credentials include accreditation as a Chief Fire Officer through CPSE, a bachelor's degree in emergency services management, and certification in Homeland Security beyond operations and leadership. Costa has the chief, I don't like saying the last name, the chief has strongly advocated for cultural change, recruitment, and retention within the modern fire service. Those are good, refreshing words to hear. Working to create a more progressive and inclusive environment. His expertise has led him to speak at nationwide fire service expos and symposiums, and he has been a contributing author for Firehouse Magazine, Fire Engineering, and Fire Rescue One. And we'll put this in the notes, but you can reach him at www.chadcosta. That's C as in Charlie, H Hotel, A Alpha, D Delta, C Charlie, O Oscar, S Sam, T Tango, A Apple.org. www.chadcosta.org. And as I just shared with the chief, I kept it. We had started this process to bring Chief Costa on way back in the summer. And of course, being an assistant chief, he's not just tech, he's not just firefighting. He has a whole gamut to watch, but he was recently announced as a member of the new editorial advisory board from Firehouse. And there are some names on there that we've luckily enough been had on the show, and that's Chief Moore and Chief Jared Renshaw, and so many other big names in here. But we want to welcome you, Chief, and we want to hear the story of what your experiences have been, what you see as strong points, and of course, weaker points that we're still, unfortunately, a year later, it's still being bantered like somebody juggling balls, and nobody's ready to say, let's grab it by the important part and deal with that. So, number one, welcome to the show, and we're very proud and honored to have you, as busy as you are, to have you spend a little time with us and our viewers and listeners as well. So, welcome aboard.
Yeah, Steve. Hey, thanks for having me, man. It did take a while. This summer was fairly busy for us here, at least for California Team 5. So yeah, it seemed like every time we tried to make something work, I was on the I-5 going somewhere. So glad to be here. It's an interesting day. 1-8 this morning, a year ago, it was kind of like when all this, when I drove into kind of hell for a few weeks, and obviously worse for a lot of people, but for the fire service, this was a rough day.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been. Sadly, we still have to remember the tragedy of 9/11, We'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Um, and now we have this we have to remember.
Yeah.
So um, let's talk a little bit about your department, what you do, and then we'll go get right into the subject itself.
Yeah. Thanks. So, one of the things that's interesting is as I talk to people for whatever reason, the my position is sort of unique in the sense of when the smaller organizations, it's not a large organization, 3 stations going to 4, um, doing some really great things, growing community, but it's not a large organization. And one of the things about fire departments that I've noticed is generationally, it's not uncommon to be light at the top and heavy in the bottom, and that's a good thing for the residents and the people that you're serving in the sense of our city is pretty well staffed. I mean, we need to add resources, and we're in process of doing that, building stations and adding more units to the road because the call volumes, we're 8,500, close to 9,000 calls, um, mostly medical, like most departments, but one thing is we don't have, and we're trying to build that. It just takes time. People aren't cheap. Build up some more administrative structure, at the top. And so for me, I am the assistant chief in our department. That's number 2 in the department. There is no additional 40-hour chiefs in our organization. So we do have someone that is a EMS that runs EMS, a civilian, a huge help for me. We do have an emergency manager. We do have a couple administrative people that are lifesavers. But other than that, as far as badge personnel, the only 40-hour person in our department, other than me and the fire chief, of course, is a training captain. So when you ask me what do I do for my organization, I explain it as a 10-lane freeway in Los Angeles, and you are trying to get to work on time and you're 10 minutes late. It feels like that every day. It's a hard lane change constantly. One minute I'm talking about EMS, one minute the next minute I'm talking about workers' comp, the next minute I'm talking about a operational policy, the next minute I'm talking about hiring somebody or a promotional exam that we're putting on. So it kind of it feels like everything. But I don't want to say everything because we do have a couple people that are major contributors to help me, somewhat stay above water. So mostly, if you looked at my title, it's going to say operations chief. The reality is that most of my time is spent more administratively, just whether it be hiring, promotions, workers' comp, yeah, budget, yeah, name it. But I am still responsible for fire and EMS and have some oversight in fire prevention. So it's a 10-lane freeway, and I always tell people like I it's just crazy. You show up to work and 1 minute you're diving in the far left lane, and before you know it, you're in the far right, and you're like, how did I get here? And trying to remember that you got to get back over into that left lane to finish whatever project or whatever you were working on. So it's a fun job in the sense of you talk to people that work in large organizations. They generally have the ability to kind of focus on their lane. They might move across lanes a little bit, but for the most part, they have their lanes they stay in. I don't have that luxury, but on the flip side of it, it's challenging. It's exciting. You're learning every day. So there's pros and cons to it. The key is trying not to burn yourself out, and I can't say I've been great at that. I've definitely had my moments where I'm exhausted with it, but then you kind of get back into gear and get excited about the next project or thing you're going to bring to the city or the department or the county. So hopefully that summarizes it. Kind of long-winded, but it's
No,
not
it's
super
fine.
specific.
That's fine, Chief. And it's funny because I remember when I joined that uh, North down in North Carolina. Well, I'm in Florida right now, so I should say up in North Carolina. But we had moved there for a job and found the firehouse right down the street from our apartment. Stopped by just to look at the shiny red trucks, in big red building. And next thing I know, 20 minutes later, I have an application in my hand.
Awesome.
But I didn't go looking for that. I didn't know that it was even a volunteer or combo department at that time. But I know that uh, I I was there in North Carolina as a job as the educational director for a conservative synagogue in Greensboro. And that was within 2 miles of my home, which means it was in 2 miles of the firehouse. And actually, the firehouse was just over about a third of a mile from our apartment down to the station on one street down, one road down. And I decided at that moment, once I settled it with my wife, because she says, "What are you talking about? Fire?" I planned to be a rabbi. That didn't pan out, so I went into education as well, and I've been doing that. I've actually started that when I was 13 years old. It was the first time I started teaching, right after my bar mitzvah.
Nice.
So it's been a lot of kids and parents through the doors over time.
Yeah.
But I
Awesome.
decided that if I was going to do this, even as a volunteer, I had to do it to the best of my ability. I can't join and say, yeah, I'll see you maybe on Sunday afternoon and stuff like that. No, I jumped in and I met the guy who's still other than my wife, he's been my best friend since 1977.
Nice.
He co-authors the book with me. We have a book coming out probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's called Fish Out of Water, Two Jewish Guys in a Deep South Firehouse. And so that's coming out. We tell a lot of the funny stories, but we also tell how serious we both were. My friend Rich had been riding when he was living in D.C. He would ride with one of the rescue teams up in Maryland. And so he had some background. I had no background except all the first aid things from Red Cross, and just did the best I could, because if I'm going to put that badge on or in my wallet, fact is I got to live to that standard. It's not a part of a badge, or as part of its bent folder. I knew that if I was going to do this and not look like an idiot, because I went to the meeting that day, I went to the firehouse, I was wearing a 3-piece suit. At the meeting, the vote-in meeting had been a Jewish holiday, so I had to go to the synagogue, take care of the services, and then ran down to the firehouse. And I was the last one getting into the room for the vote. And I sat down to this kid, and he was wearing torn gym shorts and t-shirt. And I sit down and he goes, look, were we supposed to dress up for this? And I said, didn't you get the memo? He goes, no. And I said, no, just kidding. Don't worry about it. And we introduced each other. We found out we were both Jewish. We were the first two Jewish people to ever even apply to that department there. And yet we were accepted warmly and wonderfully. And to me, that was the definition of what I saw, where I visited stations all around Greater Boston, because that's where I'm from. And I knew that I had to consider myself a professional, not just in my career as an educator, but to do the best I could as a firefighter. I went to every single class I could, and Rich and I, and now this was 77 we met, and in fact he'll be here at my home this weekend because he teaches. He gets hired out to do ground training for helicopter pilots and stuff like that. He's been the president of I don't remember the real acronym now for it, for the fire pilots. I think this is his 5th year, or the 6th year as president. Nice. So we both decided together, as we cemented our friendship, that we were going to do the best we could. We were going to make as many calls as we could and do the right thing and listen to the trainers. That's all changed 40 some odd years later, because you have new people coming in who basically want to sit in the big cushy chair, watch the ball games, when they're on. And do I have to get up? Can't Wilson pick up the slack today and let me take a break? That's not being a firefighter. That it's different. And if I commit to doing something, then I commit every ounce that I can into that. And that's why I had 8 good years. The first 4 actually were the very best. North Carolina, then I was in upstate New York, and it was an okay department. Also combo then, now it's all a career. But to me, whatever I set my mind to, I know who I am. I know what I've done. I'm no angel. I've had plenty of other issues and problems, health problems. But to me, I felt, and always have, thanks to my dad, our dad, the middle of 3 boys, taught us, if you're going to work, you're going to work the best you can. You can't do everything, so don't think you have to know every single thing. But you got to know what the boss tells you to know, and be competent with it. Yeah. And I don't see that as happening as much right now. It's a lot of, hi, this is my name, here's my paperwork, stuff like that. And then 3 days later, oh, I got a job at a different station. Sorry, I forgave you any problem, but I'm going over there. It's more money. But I see that happening, and hearing that happening. I still read the trades, do a lot online, and it's disappointing to me. I loved doing what I did, and it was an avocation for me at that time. And we have great firefighters, men and women, who dedicate their lives to this job, whether it's their full-time job or it's a combo department, whatever it is. When you commit yourself, especially when there's the possibility of life in the balance, then you have to always be willing to give your very best. Yeah. Put yourself into it and go to classes, and don't just say, well, I was going to do this. I was going to go fishing this weekend, and then 3 of your friends say, no, we're going to a practice, a burn, learn some new tactics about VEIS or whatever it is. That's where you belong. It's not a part-time, especially if you're a career firefighter. This is not a hop and go skip and skip what you do like when you don't like. You sign that line and you take that oath. And to me, the paper isn't worth anything, but it's what's in someone's heart. If they commit to being a firefighter or a law enforcement officer or EMS, EMT, paramedic, PAs, all of them that I've met have all been dedicated to the job. And yes, we have a lot of time spent away from families because we're doing our job, but that's who we are, and that's what we do. We will get up from the chair at the dinner table, at the breakfast table, at the picnic table. We'll get up when the tones sound off, and we go there, and we don't say, there'll be plenty of people there to get it. Well, what if there aren't? And we saw this, sadly, a year ago, that we had some people who were on the news every night because they were working every day. And a lot of the newscasters, the reporters who were out there, finally understood that on the 3rd, 4th day, that this is not just a house fire. It's not an apartment building fire. This is part of LA, and LA County was burning. And it was burning citizens' homes. It was burning firefighters' homes, officers' homes. There was nobody who was really exempt from Mother Nature when she said, I'm going to show you who's in charge here. Yeah. And look at the price that had to be paid for us to start paying a little bit closer attention to the issue. And sadly, it happened because people lost their lives, and then they started to blame. Right. That was no time for the blame game. I don't care if first of all, I'd read about the chief at the time. I thought she was doing, from what I saw, a good job. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, they're blaming her for the entire fire and the lack of personnel. Well, she had the whole county fire department and the other counties, Ventura County, and what are the other couple of ones that right around
Santa
the
Barbara,
yeah,
San Bernardino.
San
There's what Riverside. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's a big area.
It's a huge area, and I don't think watching it on TV, you really don't get that depth feeling of how big this fire was, um, and the tragedies that came of it. And yes, it was great to see the firefighters coming in from all over the greater LA area, LA County, and the other counties around it. But the problem was they still didn't have enough people, and at the same time, the traffic issues were almost unconquerable
Yeah.
because everyone's trying to get out, then they're trying to turn around and go back and see what and you couldn't do that. And again, we just did not have enough people to do it. But the people who were there and working, like your department and so many others, gave their all, working 36 hours, 48 hours, with maybe a little plastic tent, a little cold water, some hot dogs and hamburgers, and then they're right back on the scene again. And you lived through that. I mean, this was affected your community, all your communities that you were part of the multi the pact between departments.
Right.
So it wasn't just happening one place; it was happening all over the place. So how did you manage to get this message on your first dispatch to realize? Let me ask. Put it as a question. Did you know on this first dispatch about the fire? Did you have any idea at that point in time just how difficult this was going to be?
Well, just backing up a little bit, one of the unfortunate things is for us here, especially in the county I'm in, we've had a rough go. So when you circle back to 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, um, devastated by fires, Tubbs, the Car Fire in Shasta County, the Kincaid Fire. I mean, I'm forgetting all of them, but there was probably six or seven pretty disastrous fires prior to what we call the Eaton and the Palisades fire. And so, unfortunately for me, traveling to Maui and dealing with that disaster for a month, I had a feeling, you know, was watching TV the night the fire started, saw some of the footage, and you got to be careful with footage. You don't really know the scope of what they're filming. Are they just filming a small community? But we had a pretty decent idea. I mean, the thing about LA is there's no shortage of media. There's no shortage of social media. There's no shortage of people having an opinion and a camera. So a decent idea that we were walking into a pretty scary situation. Our team took the Eaton fire, which in comparison to the Palisades, I'm not going to compare, but I will say that the Palisades had much more focus, especially media-driven focus. For whatever reason, maybe socioeconomical reasons, maybe the fact that that community is on the beach and a lot of big names live in that area. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's closer to LA City. For whatever reason, a lot of people and still today talk about the Palisades fire and don't talk a lot about the Eaton fire. But the Eaton fire in the Pasadena area was, I don't know, I'm not going to say just as bad or worse, but it was terrible. And so for me, I'll just share a quick story. Typically as an ops chief on a team, you want to try to gather some information prior to getting to the ICP, wherever that is, and trying to kind of meet people and figure out, who's in charge, who do you need to talk to, who do you need to work with. Try to gather as much information as you can.
Right.
So when I was driving down I-5 and coming into, the Rose Bowl area, I I made a decision to get off the freeway and try to drive through kind of the fire area, if you will. And the Altadena area is where I'd heard that was kind of the worst. When I got into Altadena and into the war zone, I'd call it, I had this has never I don't think this has ever happened to me. I can't recollect one, but I had to actually pull the car over by my truck. And remember throwing up on the sidewalk, just because it was like a flashback for us of the 2017 Tubbs fire, or some people call it the LNU complex. There was more than one fire during these in Sonoma County. Um, and I remember the communities that I grew up in and lived in, all on fire, and just what we went through during that incident. And I remembered the feeling back that I've written an article on this, the feeling that I had the morning of the Tubbs fire, where I had to make that phone call to my wife about, hey, what do you want from the house? Because I'm not sure it's going to be here tomorrow. So I just had that overwhelming feeling for the people, just knowing not only what they're going through in the terror of the moment, but what they're going to go through for many years after. And that's a big thing that people don't understand is these disasters are years and sometimes lifetime, effects on people, whether it be financially or geographically or just emotionally or physically, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I was almost like I hit rewind to like 4 or 5 years, and or shoot, I guess it'd be more like 8 or 10, time flies, but um, I couldn't do it. I actually got back in my truck and just left. One of the things is at that time when I was going down there, I was aware that I was going to do planning ops. And so in the operational roles, there's people, couple, somebody out there in the day that's in charge, somebody out there that's in night, it's in charge, usually how we do it. And then a couple people back in the base camp that kind of honestly keep the wheels rolling. They're not in the spotlight a lot of times, the planning ops and strategic ops people, but they're making the machine run in the background. It's actually, I think, the hardest position on a wildland fire. But I had known that I was going to do planning ops, so I knew that I wasn't going to be calling the shots out in the field per se. Uh, so I just said, you know what, I don't need this, and I realized very quickly that this was going to be a big deal, and it was going to be a big deal for a long time. So
Yeah.
the experiences really kind of prepared me a little bit, but what was interesting is when I actually got into the war zone, if you will, I had to turn around. It was just too hard to deal with in that moment.
Well, I think I applaud you for sharing that part of your story today because um, people expect that when they call 911 or whatever number they call for an emergency, that people are going to rush to their house and do it like we do on a day by day basis. We have a couple of fires, maybe in a week we have 2 or 3 working fires, and then we go back to our regular. This didn't even allow you to do that because it, to put it politely, because I usually don't use any vulgar language, but this fire grabbed everybody by their vitals, we'll call it that way, whether you're a man, woman, kid, whatever. This fire grabbed all of you and just started twisting and turning. And I was on a couple of very large fires in my days, but you think you're invincible because you're wearing, today I was just reviewing some of the book as we're getting ready to put it to plate, and I realized that that I was in some really dangerous situations, but because our team was so good and we worked together so well, that the first one I was a little shaky on, but after that, I volunteered to go on the nozzle. Uh, I'll be at the hydrant, I said, whatever you need me to do, tell me, chief, and I'll go and do it, or captain, I'll go and do it. And I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't need any Superman uh, tactics, things like that. My job was to take care of this issue that was facing me. And that's what whether it was Rich was behind me as my second guy or I was behind him, because we made a lot of calls together. And we decided, as we talked about, we had lunch together almost every day. And we said, we're always going to do our best. And Chief saw that and sent us both, plus our mentor, one of the regular full-time guys, 24 on, 48 off. They were the driver. Their job was to get the first apparatus out. And we just said, we're going to be the best that we can be. Yeah. We may not know everything yet because I said, you know a little bit more than me, Rich, but we need to be sure we spend the time to learn what we're doing and not just do it like robots. There wasn't a lot of talk about some of the tactics we use that we have today. And that's what the tactics that we've learned about over those, 40 plus years has been wonderful, because it has reduced the injury and the death rate of our firefighters around the country and in Canada as well. And we do it to do the best job we can. And yeah, it's tough. I walked in on a couple of very, just call them nasty situations, where we would go through. On that call, we went through a couple of tanks in just about 30 minutes, because it was really bad inside that place. And but we didn't back off. We got together. Chief gave us our orders with the captain. We knocked our masks together and we went in to do the job. And we always backed each other up, and still do today, even though he lives about 3.5 hours away from me. But he's still teaching, so he's coming down this weekend to teach at one of the local departments. And he teaches he's a pilot, so he was the chief pilot for one of the counties here in Florida for about 30 years as their chief pilot. So I think that I think while it was important that the press cover this giant story, I only remember really one network that cared about the firefighters and what they were doing. They had the what we call the B-roll. They had, the fire here, this house, fire there, engines coming down and tankers coming down, stuff like that. But we felt our job was to attack the issue that we were there for, and not dance around or look around. That's not what we were supposed to do. And we committed to be the best we could be, even with the limited experience Richard had, and because I had none other than working with Red Cross for a number of years, earning every badge you could, all the way from basic first aid, junior first aid, all the way up to water safety instructor. And I did that because I did that at the college I went to. I was asked to fill in to do the test, because before you could use the pool at the college, you had to go through a swimming test. So we did that. Yeah, there were some jokes, but to me, now as a water safety instructor, I have a different plane I have to work from. I'm not just a college kid looking at the girls coming in to get the swim test. My job was to make sure that I had letting students come to the pool who were able to swim, or they were put into a special class for that. So, how was your group after that first day? How was your team just after the first 24 hours?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to clarify something I said, and then I
Okay,
when I said I left Altadena, I didn't leave the fire. I just left the fire area and went to the Rose Bowl and started doing my role. But just asking the question about the first 24 hours for an incident management team is 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 a crazy experience to be a part of. Um, essentially these teams are compiled. Sometimes you show up, usually 70, 50 to 70 people roughly show up, and they all have their roles, and they all have, what's your lane, what you're responsible for, what information do you need to gather, where start building your strategic plan about how you're gonna handle this situation. But the first 24 hours many times is fact gathering, as much facts as you can.
sure.
Sometimes there's a lot of them that are not factual, but you gotta understand the situation and understand where you're headed. That being said, with some of these fires, especially the for whatever reason, our team has had some pretty rough ones. Um, these fires that are so destructive in such a short period of time, by the time we get there, you're especially this Eaton fire, by the time we got there, and we're starting to gather facts and starting to put together a plan and starting to figure out where, where to step forward, uh, you realize that the magnitude of the problem is is unbelievably massive. If a wildland fire team, typically we're all hazards team and do go to things other than wildfires, but predominantly wildfire is what we do. Um, you think, okay, you show up, you start to get a basic understanding of how big's the fire, where's it at, what are the threats, and you start to think about strategically, okay, what actions are we going to take? Um, to protect the most important things, because sometimes you can't protect everything. And people and infrastructure and things like that are usually toward the top, but many times wildfires are kind of in the middle of nowhere where there might not be immediate threats to life or property. This fire and these fires that are burning here in California that are getting large like this and taking out communities increase your complexity and your problem tenfold, because now um, you're not only dealing with the fire that's still burning through a community, so you're dealing with the structure fire response and all the hazards that come with that, but you're also still got this wildland fire that nobody really talks about because nobody's thinking about the brush and the trees and the grass right now. They're thinking about the houses burning and people dying, and rightfully so. But we as a team can't lose sight of the fact that the whole fire is our problem. It's not just one portion. Now, granted, we will focus most of our efforts on those high priority things, but from an IMT perspective, what's interesting is you got to remember it's not necessarily those first 24 hours may not be us actually fighting the fire, or a lot of it is building the infrastructure, getting the resources, and making sure that we have everything we need to support all the firefighters that are there and coming in the community, the media, figuring out how do we build that infrastructure to support all this, because this is going to be a multi-week, multi-month operation. So you have this interesting, they call it, you have this interesting time, and sometimes it can be 3 or 4 days till you transition, where you're kind of behind the curve. You actually typically you are behind the curve because the fire has done so much damage so quickly. Now you show up, it takes a little while to get everything. underneath you. And so the first 24 hours are a lot of fact gathering, a lot of craziness, a lot of people running around, a lot of phone calls, text messages, a lot of meetings, discussions. Just really trying to get a good feel for what you're dealing with, what you need to get there to make this better and start to turn the corner. And to be quite honest with you, this was way more than a wildland fire, because now you have a USAR perspective. You have people that unfortunately, we expected there to be life loss, and there almost always is when you rapidly burn down thousands of homes at night. That unfortunately does happen. We were aware that there was evacuations, but that not everybody had left. All those type of things. So we had this unbelievable task of trying to, where do we start? Where are we going? What do we need? And we're blessed in California, uh, because there's just so many resources, and and eventually, those did get there, and I mean resources. I mean way more than just engines and firefighters. But you can imagine when you're in the LA region, the media part of this and the community outreach and the messaging, the interviews on TV cameras. I mean, it skyrockets. If you there's just so much down there. There's so many different departments. There's so many opinions. There's so many political push and pulls. It it it's a different area to fight. I mean, when you show up to the counties in SoCal, especially LA County, you better be on your A game, and you better have your stuff together, because they'll tear you apart. They'll tear you apart, and we've seen that, unfortunately, right or wrong. Uh, if you've watched the TV in the last year, you can see what happens when
Right.
you get a face in front of the camera. So it was overwhelming. I think that, but what's cool about IMTs and what's really amazing to watch is every single person on that team understood the complexity, understood that the challenge that was ahead, and it's almost like a bring it attitude. Like you said, it's like, throw at me, I'll say this any day, throw at me the biggest, craziest situation ever. It's like it's what we live for. And as tragic as it was and as terrible as it was, I'm very proud and felt blessed to have the opportunity to be a part of that team that did what we could for, I think we were there 18 days or something like that.
Sure. Just before we take a break, could you define for our viewers and listeners IMT? Because there's a lot
Yeah,
of them.
yeah. So an IMT is an incident management team across the country. There's different levels of incident management teams, but for us here, it's a federal incident management team that is comprised. It's interagency, so it's comprised of people from different federal fire departments, local government, county fire departments. So we're a blended team of people, which lends itself fairly well to different complexities, because a lot of times someone on the team or someone's got experience with something, whatever it is. Uh, and it's kind of neat to be able to work with people that have a lot of different backgrounds. Sometimes I'm working with people that one of the reasons I was put in the position I was in Maui was because of my experiences in Petaluma and my day job and what I deal with. So it's kind of neat, but my partner next to me might be a wildland firefighter that's never been in a structure fire, and they're like, "Hey, what should we do?" So yeah, incident management team, and we're complex in the sense of can go to any type of incident, whether it be flood, tornado, doesn't matter if whatever the issue is, we can go across the country.
Right. Also, I think that one of the good, not shouldn't say good, that doesn't cover it, but one of the best things about, and having visited out there through the greater LA area a number of years ago, but you folks, besides your uh, the pacts that you have with neighboring departments, stuff like that. You have Cal Fire.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard Cal Fire for years and years and years. Matter of fact, I had one of the assistant chief of the air unit,
Yeah.
and they just getting the new some of the new aircraft coming in from Colson in Canada and a few others. That Cal Fire, no questions asked, comes and help when that county administration says we need more than we have with our multi-box programs. We need more than that. Yeah, we have 5 departments that we share with, in our area, but that wouldn't have been enough in this case. And so you bring Cal Fire in, and we're going to talk about that when we get back. But I think even with Cal Fire, and it's a great team in many ways, and like any other professional team, there are problems. We can't. No one's going to sugarcoat this in general. Forget the fire was as big as it was, but in general, that you can't always say I can handle this, because until you're there and you see, or the situation changes when you're there, 4 minutes, 5 minutes after you're there, all of a sudden you didn't know that there was a gas tank down in the bottom, and boom, that levies, and who knows what happens with that. And so the fact that you have the extra resources that most other communities doesn't have. But the one thing, again, about California, especially Southern California, all these counties know each other and they work together, and it's part of that, the adhesive that Cal Fire brings, because then it's not on just a single location in charge. Now you have the state version of support, so you get them in, and you got a whole bunch more people who are going to respond and help, and they'll do everything from fighting fire to rescues to handing out water or Gatorade or whatever to the firefighters who are just taking a blow for a minute and just trying to catch their breath, because they know after 4 or 5 minutes they got to go back, so do that again, get a fresh tank and do that. Now a lot of improvements have been made since my days in the 70s and 80s, especially that you have lighter tanks, because now they're all they're no longer steel tanks anymore, and neither are the frames. So that makes it a whole lot easier to carry around a tank that can hold more than the 20 to 30 that I had. And now you can get 60, and I think there's one now that I think I saw in one of the trades, about almost 90 minutes of air, depending. To me, that's a great opportunity. But you don't just say, okay, instead of the 32 minutes, you're going to have just 90 minutes of that. You can't just toss them the new tank and say, just do it. Because again, you're entering to a different room than you had been. And you have to make sure that you put your time in to learn to do it, and do it correctly and safely and expeditiously. That's the most important part. All right, we're going to take a break here, folks. If you're watching the video, you won't see anything occur that's different, and we're going to add some of our sponsors, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with our guest, Assistant Chief Chad Costa of the city of
Petaluma. It's a tough one.
Petaluma, California, and a member of the area team that works so hard. And we also have to remember, folks, our rescuers, our firefighters, our law enforcement, and our EMS people, our road utilities people, everybody suffered at this fire. Even if they weren't hurt or anything like that, they come back and they find out that their house burned, or your brother-in-law's house burned, or your sister-in-law lost everything. All they have is the steps going up to their front door. And that's real because we saw this. We saw in the news. So we need to talk when we come back. We're going to talk about the human side of it, and why so many of our wonderful men and women who fought this fire, well, again, no matter which division of first responder you're in, you all suffered. We didn't, but a lot of us who were firefighters felt it. So we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. Our guest today is Assistant Chief Chad Costa of the Petaluma Fire Department. And I just got an education just before we came back on the air, was the fact that although they're located, Petaluma's located further north, in towards the San Francisco, the Bay Area, let's call it there.
Yeah.
The fire didn't go all the way up to there per se, but
Right.
staging, all of that was still being used in your area.
Yeah, it was what I was explaining when we were off was LA, this specific fire, well, two fires, the Palisades and the Eaton, were in LA County area, LA City, LA County, depending on which one you're talking about. The response to these fires were the whole state. There were people from the whole state. And for me, not only did some of our firefighters from our department go down there, that's fairly common, and we can talk a little bit about the mutual aid system in California. But I don't. This specific fire was a drive down I-5 for me for quite a ways. But the response to these fires were throughout the whole state, and eventually other states were there, and countries, and
Right.
yeah, at some point, there was a response from all over the place that pretty much everybody was there. But yes, the way these IMTs work and the way the mutual aid system works in California, it's an amazing process where essentially we can order resources and have stuff on the road fairly quickly from all over the state. And it's quite a ways from my county to LA County. It's a long ways. But we're in Southern California all the time, and unfortunately, like you stated, the news media does talk a lot about fires in Southern California, and rightfully so. There's been quite a few, but Northern California, especially in the last 10 years, Northern California has had devastating wildfires that were just as bad, if not worse. I mean, again, you can't compare when you're talking about homes and people's lives, but we in our own county went 2017 Tubbs fire, like I stated earlier, the 18, 19, 20, there was significant wildfires in our own county that burned down the community I live in, surrounding communities. But for these two fires that we're talking about today, they were in Southern California, and my response was quite a ways to the north, but everybody was headed south to help, from Northern California.
Right. And I think that goes to show that we don't measure success not by how fast we did it, but how well we did it from the moment each department was notified that they're being activated and will be heading south. I think the fact that you and a lot of the other people there knew that, based on your experience, this was not going to be an easy task, right? And when you think that you drove, what, about 5 hours to get from?
It's probably about 6 to 7 for that. I mean, it depends what you're driving. Engines are going to go slower, but
Right.
I'm in a pickup truck, so it goes pretty fast. But yeah, it's a ways, California is a not a super wide state, but it's long.
Large.
And so that I-5 freeway that runs down the middle of it had a lot of, I passed hundreds of people headed south on, and that was early in the morning, the day after, night after, the morning after it started. So yeah, but that's fairly common for California, when you're talking about these large wildfires that have so much complexity and so many needs. The mutual aid system here is utilized throughout the summer, unfortunately, pretty regularly, and it's not uncommon to see an LA County fire engine in the northern part of the state, and it's not uncommon to see the opposite. We all need each other, and yeah, these response, you're not just talking about one fire, you're talking about two that were generational type fires,
Right.
all at once. And so you can imagine the needs to handle this were extremely, extremely large.
Right. And that pulled also to be able to do that, you had local police, county sheriff's offices, and the state police and the highway patrol all working together to help you folks get down,
Yeah,
clearing lanes. Now I know you guys weren't responding code 3 all the way,
right.
but it didn't make sense. I mean, I'm going to drive 6 hours. I'm going to have my siren going
Yeah.
for 6 hours. I don't think I need that, but I can
No.
step a little bit more on the pedal and get there safely without having to uh, entertain anybody on the highway. But
Yeah.
again, knowing that this southbound traffic is going to help people, I think that buys an extra couple of goody two shoes for people coming down, and that makes them feel better. They've heard about these fires already, and they know that traffic's going to be headed south quite a bit. And
Yeah. Yeah, we overlook, it's pretty common for us to overlook the law enforcement side of this, and it's just as critical as the fire side. Law enforcement's responsible for evacuations. They have oversight and responsibility for a large part of these responses, and they have a very similar system. It is not uncommon, when my community burned down, I pulled up to a roadblock, and you never know what department that officer is going to be from. It's very commonly from other counties, because quite frankly, whether it's law or fire, there's not enough officers on the streets in these areas to handle these type of incidents by themselves. So they do the same thing. They're calling for more officers from all over the state, to come down and help with roadblocks and evacuations and all the other looting and all the other stuff
logistic,
that happens.
they set up logistics for
Yeah, yeah, and they're
to move the needs uh, during different places in the state, and without them, traffic would be. It was bad enough as it was. Okay, people
yeah,
fleeing for their lives, and many of those who did flee survived, thank God.
right, right.
Um, but it's I think what really brought it home for many viewers is looking at the stars that we call stars in television and movies who lost their homes.
Hmm.
I just saw a piece the other day with Cameron Matheson,
Hmm.
well-known actor on Hallmark movies, and he was showing what was left of his house, and he has some younger daughters as well, and it was a very moving thing to see what this father and husband had to go through along with his family when they had to rush out of their homes to flee to safety, and which was the right thing. Um, yes, it's difficult, but you can always rebuild,
Right.
right? Maybe it'll be on the same spot where you were, maybe it's a different spot, but you will have a home again. Those who we lost, we don't, we
Right.
don't, and that adds another bad fact of this fire.
For
And
sure.
that has you could see in a lot of the videos. I remember one shot from I think it was Riverside County, and the wind was just whipping, and they kept trying to spray water, but it kept being thrown right back in their face. But they didn't stop. I saw they were just running an inch and three quarter, which to me, well, I ran an inch and a half, but people don't understand the difference. How much water more you water with that quarter of
Yeah.
an inch, how much it adds to the flow, which means more water on the fire.
Right.
And I think people just assume that it's just like in their neighborhood. An engine comes up, it connects to a hydrant, and then starts spraying water. This wasn't that kind of a fire. That's your run of the mill fire, maybe, but it's not. You can't even compare that to the fires, the Eaton and the what the second one was
Palisades. Yeah.
Palisades, right?
Yeah.
Palisades. You can't control those, compare those at all. So you get your crew and other crews from up north of the state are all transferring their cells, their packs, and everything from northern part of the state of California all the way down to the greater LA County area.
Yeah.
But there are other down southern, other Riverside County and Ventura. All these other people needed help as well.
Yeah.
And yet, while it was not enough, and I don't think you could have had enough to put out that fire in even 2 weeks' time. It was just the conditions were horribly correct and ready to fire off.
Yeah.
And that's when we got to see, thankfully, most of us saw it and realized what it was. And we remember those who didn't.
Correct.
And that's the key. And I think how do you compare working with your great crews in Petaluma when you have to make that switch into the Cal Fire level of everybody sharing up? How did your teams? How did they do with all of this?
Yeah. So the inner what generally is called unified command. Um, so essentially these fires can be super complex and for a lot of reasons. And you bring up a good topic, multi-jurisdictional responsibility. You have to remember that, these fires, especially the Eaton fire, was burning on Forest Service land. It was burning on state land, but and a lot of local jurisdictional land, as it came off the mountain and pushed down into Altadena and Sierra Madre and those areas. So when you bring that complexity, not only are you bringing different fire departments that have responsibility for the fire, you have different law enforcement agencies that have responsibility. You have different city, county, state, federal leaders that have responsibility and have some skin in the game. You have all the different community leaders that have skin. I mean, it's wildly complex because you're trying to bring together I think at some point in time there was probably 7 or 8 different unified incident commanders because the fire scope had covered so much geographical landscape that it pushed into so many different geographical responsibilities. And now you're trying to put together this strategic plan of how you're going to prioritize and handle this incident and start bringing some stabilization to the community with 10 different people with 10 different opinions and 10 different priorities. And that's a very complex thing to do. And it's the incident command team and the leadership's responsibility to work with those people and to put together a plan and start doing something. So what's interesting and what's so amazing for me and why I love wildland firefighting in particular is because in structural firefighting, a lot of times you show up and it's fairly straightforward. Granted, some building fires, some fires are more complex than others. I'm not going to take that away, but it's a box, and how you attack that box depends upon the building, people inside of it, and the fire conditions and what's inside of it. Um, Fairly straightforward, and I don't want to take away the complexity of that, but most of the time it's not super complex. Wildland fire is you got everything, like you said, you got power lines, you got gas lines, you got homes, you got people, you got infrastructure, you have trees and
And
landscape
animals. Yeah,
and
yeah.
animal. It's
Wild.
everything.
Yeah, wild, not just pets, but wild animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the key to that is now you start getting 4,000 people on these incidents and they're spread out everywhere. They're working different shifts. Logistically, how do you support them? Logistically, how do you try to get them what they need to be successful to do the tasks that you're asking them to do? It's an orchestra that is amazing to watch behind the scenes, and really, it's not one like anything. It's just a bunch of different people with a bunch of different experiences and knowledge and training that have a role, and that role hopefully puts together the puzzle. And yeah, the puzzle's going to have holes in it, and it's going to have mistakes, and it's not going to be perfect, but you're just trying to build the best puzzle you can and get all the pieces together to try to start making some progress. And I think to answer your question, I think that's really when these things happen, everybody just becomes part of a bigger picture. The picture just gets bigger. And so humbly, you have to realize that you have a role in this. You're a piece of that puzzle, and the puzzle is just massive, and you have a bunch more pieces, and strategically it becomes much more challenging. But what's great about firefighters and law enforcement too is we understand very quickly the complexity and the challenge that we have in front of us. And what happens is somebody like me that in the city of Petaluma Fire Department, day to day, I have a pretty big role in the organization. I A lot of people come to me and ask me questions, and I'm having to make a lot of decisions that affect the organization very regularly. In these scenarios, you're just a piece of a much bigger puzzle, and you can't walk into these things like, oh, I'm the lead person in charge of this. I'm the operations chief, and I'm calling the shots. It's 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 much more democratic in that sense. You have to work with a lot of different people. You have to listen to their needs. You want to listen to their experiences and their knowledge so that you make the right decisions for that area of the fire. It's just, I think to summarize, it's just a much bigger puzzle, and you're just a smaller piece in that puzzle. And that's where it's amazing to watch these IMTs work is how do they put that puzzle together? How do they grab the right pieces, put them in the right spots? That's what makes you successful. Uh, and there's a million other things that
Yeah.
make you successful, but really that's the core of it.
Right. And I think the part of that core is these people know their job and they want to do it,
Oh yeah.
and that's the key. I want to ask this question and bring it a little bit closer to home. Um, how did the first crew that went down there were you in the lead of that first?
Yeah, I was the first one down there from our area.
So
Well, on the Eaton fire, the Palisades fire had people that were there before me, but
yeah.
Eaton fire specifically.
So on this, how did had your crew that day, that first day, had they any had they had any experience that would have prepared them for what they were going to find when they headed south.
Yeah, and like you know, unfortunately, 17, 18, 19, 20 were very, very, very rough years for our region here in Northern California in the Bay Area. There were significant wildfires that took lives, burned, into the city of Santa Rosa, burned down half the community that I live in.
Oh, wow.
Really, it was a 2016, and I'm forgetting the name of the fires in Lake County. I think it was 16 or 15. I could be off. Was kind of the first real big eye opener for us in California of like what's going on. It was not uncommon it was not uncommon, 30,000 acre fires were big fires not that long ago. And now, the August complex, think that was 2018. I could be off. I was, you know, on that fire for a month. It was over 1 million. A 1 million acre fire, wrap your mind around that. It's incredible. But yes, unfortunately, pretty much everybody that is a firefighter in this region has had some experience with this type of complexity. Again, not comparing, but some experience. So it wasn't a first. In my career, that I've seen people go through the firsts of these type of incidents, and quite frankly, I know people that I never want to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's ended people's careers to have to deal with and see some of the things that you have to go through when communities are burning down and people are dying. It is the emotional side of it is a real thing for sure,
Yeah.
and it affects a lot of people still today.
Right. And I think as it should, because if we turned off our emotion switch before we went into a call of that kind, of that level, or a big box fire, then we know California had a couple of those
Yeah.
in the last few years. Um, I'm very much in touch with uh, Chief John Vance and B Shifter and listen to them. He's been on a couple of times, trying to get him on again, Chief Vance. I'm still looking for you. But I think the fact is that if everybody is on the same page, now they may have 2 years and this one may have 12 years on the job. But once we're there, our shift is there. We do roll call, start with the morning, whether it's a practice class or it's time to clean up the firehouse. That's kind of like the easy stuff. And then you're waiting for the bells or the pages now with the soft lighting and the nice voices coming up higher and higher, only in the
Yeah.
rooms where that team has to go out from.
Yeah.
But we always look forward to those bells ringing because sometimes it just repeats of calls, fall out of bed calls, same place or this nursing home and stuff like that. This is a totally different day when they walked out, when the call came in and you guys had to start setting up your group to start heading south.
Right.
How did your team, that first day that you headed, how did they take it? And what were their thoughts and feelings that they shared with you?
Yeah, what you love about fire or public safety people, at least the mass majority is, I think I might have sort of said this earlier, is whatever the biggest challenges are, we want to be there, and if we're not there, it's sometimes worse than being there
Right.
because uh, when I talk about the Lahaina and Maui and the Maui wildfires and I was on a state team at that time and was there for 30 days. Um, there were moments where it was like, am I helping? Like, you have these moments where you're kind of doubting yourself, but I will share that not being there and not being the fires that I haven't been at or haven't been a part of, sometimes rub me more than the ones that I was there because at least you can feel like you're doing something. And and the reason I'm saying this is because I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people that were a part of these incidents. Um, there's many moments where you're like, we're just pissing in the wind here, if you will. We're
Yep.
not. What are we doing? Are we actually making progress? Or this is just too much for us to be able to handle. We need to go do something else or regroup here. But being there and feeling like you are a part of that bigger machine to make some positive effort or change uh, is very fulfilling, and it's really what drives people. It's the stress, the complexity, the the horror of it actually is kind of what drives you to want to be there and do more and keep doing this stuff. It's a wild mental thing, and I love talking about this because there I can remember during the summer being at fires and being like, I am so done with this. I just want to go home. I want to turn my brain off. I want to sit on the couch and watch football or base, whatever. I just want this to be over. And I'll be driving home and I'll get home and a few days will go by and you're like your brain for some reason tells you I'm looking forward to going back and doing that again, as terrible as it was and as horrible as it was to see. But it's just that, like you've stated many times, it's that drive to serve. It's that drive to try to make someone's life a little bit better or save something for somebody. So what I saw were very exhausted mentally and physically people that felt defeated, just like I have many times. Defeated in the sense of like we didn't do enough, or could we have done more, or if we had more people, and kind of what you see in the media. But but our job, as the leaders of these things, is to keep people focused on the task, remind them that we are just a piece of a puzzle, and everything we do does have positive return in the long run. And many times on these incidents, you can't do anything right, in certain moments of the fire. What you're doing is just being there and trying to get people out of the way and trying to save what you can. But but like you said, man, you can build houses, you can't build people, and that's really what really hurts, I think, a lot of our firefighters is the loss of life and the what if. Could we have done something different? What if we had more? What if we were there sooner? What if we did this tactic versus that tactic? But the first 24 hours, it's so overwhelming and there's so much going on. There's so much complexity and it's so busy and you're running around everywhere. I just saw a bunch of exhausted people that were giving it all they can and happy to be there, honestly.
Well, that's that's the that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
Not every call that we go on is fun. Matter of fact, few are fun, and the rest are serious.
right.
And there's also a time and a place for humor. And we have to know that whether you're the rookie or you're the chief, we still have to remember dignity, uh, how we, our job is to take care of the people that we serve. And while to us it might seem to be a very easy uh, and well, just an easy uh, resolve to it, then you get caught up. And it's only natural, no matter how many years you have, that you remember some of the great times, great saves, and we have to look at those that weren't so successful and was beyond our control. Because you don't want it, if it's going to be out of control, you got to make sure that you have done everything you possibly could. It
Right.
just you weren't able to catch up with what had started before you even walked through the door. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to bring to the job. Again, whether you're career, volunteer, part pay, whatever, you have to go in there still being a human. You can't shut it off. You go into a burnt house. You're told that sadly there were two children that didn't make it out. You as gung ho as you were to stop that fire, now you have to bring that same gusto to the search to find those kids. Nobody likes that job. We hate it, but it has to be done because that's part of what our oath is about.
Yeah.
And it's
If
not
not,
about us.
if not you, then who? You know?
Exactly. And again, we also have to realize, thankfully, since about the last 10 years or so, that we have firefighters who are monitoring uh, themselves. And this is kind of tough for me. I need to talk to somebody about that. Do it.
Right.
Do it. Go to your officer. Go to your chief. Go to uh, your rabbi, your priest, your minister. Go find and talk it out so that you can continue to be the great firefighter that worked his or her butt off to try to save those kids. But we can't save everybody. That's the hardest reality we face when we come in as new firefighters. We think we're going to save the world. And then our first cardiac call, we lose the patient. But that's
Yeah.
not necessarily our fault. It was when they got sick. How long have they been sick? What medication are they on? What can we bring to try to do it? And sometimes we're successful. We really we do get a successful resuscitation. But also we have to be ready that sometimes that line does not finish, doesn't come to the end. And as much as it hurts us personally, you did your best.
Yeah. We I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words, but we almost in the fire service a lot of times we set people up for failure in this environment that we're talking about today
Right.
with these fires because you go to these fires. I mean, I've been there years ago when I was, new to doing this. You go there with that same mentality that you have when you go to a fire in your own community or a house fire in your own community where 99% of the time, you have success. Like you said, you put the fire out, you kept it to a room and contents, you kept it to the building, whatever your objectives were. You kept the fire small, you stopped it from burning that house down if it's a wildland fire. We do have a lot of successes. When you go to these type of incidents, before you get there, you already lost. And, yes, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that you're not going to give it your all and you're not going to eventually have wins and you're not going to make differences. You are, but you got to realize that mental part of it of, hey, this was a loss. And these firefighters that were in those communities doing the amazing things they were that night, the hell that they went through, the heroics. But I guarantee you, they had a lot more losses than wins because it's just not when winds are blowing like this and houses are burning, you don't have the upper hand. You don't
Right.
have the say, and many times you're just reacting. And that's a tough thing for people in our business because we push and we train people to be winners. We train people to if you do this, you'll have this result, and it's just not the case in these things. We sometimes are completely helpless and makes us feel hopeless at times. And I've been there many times, unfortunately, and it's a shitty feeling, and it's something that people carry with them forever.
Right.
That regret. So yeah, no, it's a big deal, and the mental health part of this job is I think you said it. It's been taken much more seriously, and there's been a lot more resources for it, and that's great. But but that doesn't mean that people aren't still struggling out there and that these aren't tough incidents because they are.
Right. Right. And the saddest point, I guess, is in all three of the first responder classes, we are losing too many of these first responders to their own hand.
Yeah,
That's the saddest part of our story.
right.
You know?
Yeah, and it I don't have the answer, but I do know that I am proud to say that at least in this region, I can't speak for across the country, but I'm going to assume there's some similarities. The mental health side of things and the stigma and the help. I've gone through my own challenges. Some of them are documented, some aren't. Um, it's pretty amazing how many resources are out there and how much people want to help. The
Right.
hardest part, the hardest part is recognition and asking, and not letting yourself get to that either that fatal endpoint or to a point that you're so dug so deep in the hole that it's being forced upon you.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been there, I've been there where there wasn't recognition, and it got so far down in the dark hole that it was like you have to get help. Um, and so hopefully we're trying to do a better job at allowing people to talk about things and to get those resources sooner. And start talking about them right away instead of the old school mentality of push it somewhere and flush it down with some whiskey later.
Yeah. Well, we don't want that either.
No,
Um, in the right setting, lift that
sure.
glass and enjoy it, but not when you're down and out. That's not the time
Right.
to start and start playing
Agreed.
with that. That's firefighter TNT. That's the problem, and not just
Yep.
firefighter, police and EMS. That's the danger point. We have to make sure we stay away from that and never light that
Yeah.
fuse. That's
Yeah.
the
Well,
key.
you talked, let me give you an example. These are real examples. You're a fire engine with three people on it, and you're in this community that's got houses burning, it's threatening more houses, people running everywhere, screaming at you. Um, you know damn well that there's lives at stake, and you're just three people in a fire engine. What do you do? What house do you try to save? You don't, how much water do you have? All these things are running through your head, and inevitably, there is no right answer. There's no perfect answer in these scenarios. And you try to do something and you make a decision to make a stand on this street or try to save this home. This has happened so many times. And you put all this effort into it, blood, sweat, and tears into that because you're like, hey, this is what I'm going to do here. This is my piece of the puzzle. And you lose. Either you think you win, you leave, you come back the next day, the house is gone, um, or it's just you run out of water. Whatever the reason is, the fire becomes too big for you to put out. That's gonna weigh on people for the rest of their lives potentially, and
Sure.
weigh on the fact of especially the leadership. Like, should I have picked a different piece of the puzzle? Should I have went to a different street? Should I have used a different size hose? I mean, I heard you mention that. Should I have used the deck gun? I mean, it's the what ifs in these incidents, and the if I would have done something different is brutal. It's brutal and it's sad because honestly, many times no decision was better than the other. You're just trying to do something,
Right.
and you're just doing the best you can with situation that's way, way, way out of your control.
Yeah, it is. Well, Chief, I can't thank you enough. The wait was worth it. with
Yeah.
our postponements, but this was excellent.
Yeah.
I thank you very, very much for taking time from a very busy schedule.
Yeah.
Um, and just wishing you and your team all the best. Can people reach out to you? Do you have an email or website?
Yeah, if they go into my website, that www.chadcosta.org, it'll get you
Okay, I'm
anything to
sorry,
be able to
www dot
chadcosta.org.
chadcosta.org, you said?
Yep, yep. And there's ways to get a hold of me in there. And
Yeah,
I used to have a pretty large social media presence. I've backed that off substantially just because of workload and just, you get to a point where you can only do so much.
exactly.
But yeah, via social media, or it's got, you can get my email pretty
Right.
easily off that site. And yeah, happily people can reach out to me and at any time.
Thank you very much. And what you shared with us was not easy, some of it. It wasn't easy for you when you did it. It's not easy for another firefighter to hear it, but we learn. That's the key.
Right.
We learn from this, just like ever. You know, I got into after action reports very early on when I first got into this volunteer department because I said there's a way of doing this. At one time when I blew up my knee and I was going to be out of commission for about 3 months, I put a video system together that I already had, and I was able to do that. So I was able to respond with the equipment and then shoot as much video as I can. And then we came back and VHS had just basically come out and was working, and we sat down and review it. And I think while it's still fresh in our minds, that's the time to do it after action review.
Yeah.
You got to take might not be the first one, may not be the hour long discussion, it might be just 10-15 minutes, but then you got to follow up with a real in-depth after action review to make sure we did everything right and that we'll do something right the next time as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much. It's definitely been worth the wait. Um, we, those of us on this side of the screen, can't even imagine what you and the team and all the people in state of California who went through this, no matter they were citizens, fire, law enforcement, EMS, social services. That's one we didn't bring in. Social services is so important. And this
Yes.
pet rescue was amazing out there when we saw the film and everything like that. So our sincere gratitude to you, wishing you much success in the future, and keep teaching because you teach well.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate your time today.
Well, folks, that's going to close it up on the video side. If you're listening to the audio, we'll have a little bit more content on that. But for now, we wish you all a very happy and healthy new year, and we'll be back with you to see you soon. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and let's make sure we take care of everybody. Take care now.